Aaron Hicks, he's coming back from Tommy John surgery also, and he actually tweeted out saying that his elbow never felt the same. So it's a complete crapshoot. Everybody's body, quote unquote body, reacts differently to different types of procedures and surgeries and everything like that. It seems that Salvador Perez seems to have healed properly. He's 100% ready, and I don't see any difference in his playing time. He should be the normal Salvador Perez going into next year.
Okay, thanks for that. Let's do one more positional market premium discussion, and then we'll go on to statistical. Middle infielders versus corner infielders. As you said before, Tristan, we find that people are still paying much at shortstop, at second base, or whatnot, as compared to corner. So what is your strategy and how to handle the market in those cases?
So I actually don't put much of a weight positionally on any of the four infield positions, other than and it's probably been beaten a little bit too much here. I'm banging this drum a little bit too loudly about how first base is nowhere near as deep as it used to be. It doesn't mean it's devoid of talent. It's just that it doesn't have quite the top level stars. Doing a quick analysis over that one, we were looking at almost 15 first basemen would end up in the top 100 as recently as 5 years ago, and in the past couple of years, you'd be looking at 8 or so. So it has cut back a little bit. One thing I would say is I do attempt to funnel certain categories into these positions. I do find that you're going to get a little bit more of your stolen base production from shortstop, specifically, occasionally from second base. You're not going to get that from the corner infield position. So you got to be careful about if you fill these spots at the corners and you don't get enough home run and RBI production, you're going to need to go for the stolen bases at short and second base. And therefore, you might be forced into making a certain decision during the draft at some point or in the auction at some point there. So that's probably the one thing I keep in mind at the draft table.
Right, and they are intermixed, the concept of positions and statistics. And you're right, it's not independent of each other. You know, you have to realize that there are stolen bases in the middle infield, so you got to make use of that when you do your spread. Ruvain, for you for corner infielders, I know that you and I have talked a lot in the past that especially that there's a market discount. I mean, we've found that Jose Abreu, I mean, until this year where he broke out, he was always a bargain. Freddie Freeman, she should have been a first-rounder for many years before that. What's your take on the corner infielder market discount?
You're going to get your biggest discount. Not in the outfield has stolen bases, so people go after the stolen bases. And like Tristan said, and you said, the middle infield is where you get the stolen bases, so that may be why there isn't a premium for those types of positions. But corner infield, that's where you're going to get your extreme bargains. You mentioned Dominic Smith. He was an extreme bargain last year. Manny Machado, he was going later than what he did. He was a top 10 player last year. You have these players like Kyle Seager, who performed over. Rafael Devers, you can even get a great bargain for him this year. You don't have to pay premium because he had, I guess, a down season for him. Pete Alonso had a down season. Is he going to continue to hit the home runs at the same prominent level that he did the year before? All these players, your corner infield, you have to aim to get the big boppers. You got to get the big bopper either at corner or first or third. That's where you get them, and you don't necessarily have to pay premium for them because power is all over the place.
All right, so let's move on to statistical. So the question I have here, which has come up in the last couple of years, is do you pound the power or do you reach for speed? Now, there's almost a contradictory two ways of thinking that you can have. We know that homers are up in baseball. In 2019, 58 players hit at least 30 homers. In 2014, there were only 11. It's crazy how power is up. The thing is, because homers and power is up, we need more of it. That's the truth. But at the same time, there's more available, right? At the bottom of draft, there are more power hitters. So the question is, do we need to pound the power early, saying we just need a large quantity, or do we say, no, we can wait because there's so many available? Now, it's almost the opposite conundrum for stolen bases in that we say there's very few stolen bases out there. Stolen bases are shrinking, especially the concentration, right? Other than Adalberto Mondesi, is there anybody who's going to steal over 30 bases this year? We don't know. So the question is, should we put less emphasis on the stolen base category because there's so little of it? Or should we say, well, I mean, it's so easy to dominate, take Mondesi or a Turner or somebody and try to dominate it because the value of a stolen base guy is so much more. Yes, you need to pay more. So, Tristan, what do you do to solve these two conundrums? Do we pound the power or reach for the speed? Some of both, none of both? How do you play this?
So I hate being the fence guy in this one, but I have to preach the balance of a roster here. And that's something I try to keep in mind here is that if you wait on power and you only build it up at the end of the draft, well, a lot of those players have warts. Usually they're tied to being on teams that don't give you run production. You're going to be disappointed in terms of the lineup and the influence on runs and RBI and potentially even on plate appearances. The other is batting average. Very often those guys late have terrible batting averages or at least are likely to drag your team down, and then you're going to have to spend elsewhere to get somebody to balance that category out. If you lean on the speedsters, you could end up having a team that's got one player who does a lot of this and another player who does a lot of that. And if one of them goes down, you're going to be swinging your team towards a very, power-driven squad. Or if those guys get hurt, you're going to have a very speed-driven squad. And then people are going to take you on the trade market. I've seen this happen too many times. I like to go for the balanced type of players. There were, let's see, where was it? It's, as I can't even find my number, how many it was. I think it was 26. 26 players had 20 steals and 20 home runs and 10 steals in the last full year in 2019. That's the pool in which I want to go. I want to kind of space out my stolen bases. I like Cody Bellinger for a good example because he contributes something in terms of steals. I don't want to be paying the Adalberto Mondesi premium and get all my steals in one bucket there. I want to try and get a guy with 10, a guy who's underrated who might get 12, 15. Maybe I'll spend a little bit on a 25 to 30 steal guy, but I'm typically just not chasing here. It's hard to describe that. I would just say, be balanced. Don't lean on either category.
Okay, the only thing to that I'd say, though, is that you'll find that a lot of the players in the middle in certain drafts, even if they're 20/10 type players, they're still going to be pushed up. Because of the 10 steals, they might constitute a premium. Are you okay with paying the premium somewhere in the middle, at the bottom for stolen bases, or must you get something up top? Like, how does this concept of people paying up for steals make Trey Turner more worth it in the first round, or are you good with like accumulating the Marcus Semyons, Cavan Biggios, even if they're a little bit more expensive than they should be, but you're paying a market premium down in the 7th round, not in the 1st round?
Honestly, I'm typically taking the ones in the early rounds. I'm usually going with that ace I mentioned before, and then I'm going with the guys who probably blow past 20 and 10 if I can get them. I won't overdraft them. I'm not going to be the guy who takes Cavan Biggio at pick 60. That's not going to be, not in a batting average league at least.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that the market premium in the middle is too steep, and the market premium above is probably adequate. Ruvain, what are your thoughts? I know that you and I also like to do the 2010 type guys like Tristan. Anything to add?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, I would always pay the extra dollar or pick an extra round earlier a top guy than have to pick a guy lower down because there's less a lower floor. I mean, a higher floor for the higher pick as opposed to the lower pick. Now, I want to throw out some numbers here. Last year for stolen bases, 13 players had 10 or more steals last year, and that's in a 50-game season. 3 of them. Roman Quinn, Dylan Moore, Manny Margot. You didn't have to pay a premium for any of those. In 2019, of the top 20 stolen base guys, 5 of them were not drafted. You could have got them off the waiver wire. As for power, 51 players last year had 10 or more home runs, and that's, again, in a 50-game season. That means they're on pace for 20-plus home runs. 21 of them had 40-plus RBIs, and 40 of them had 35-plus runs. You don't have to pay a premium for power. It will come to you. They do have the warts, like Tristan said, but you don't have to pay the market premium for it. You can get it at your own. You can wait on it, and you can still get the guys you want. Now, I'm not saying there's some players you shouldn't pay a premium for, but you don't for both steals and power. There are players there. If you pick the right one, you get the right one. You don't have to pay the premium for either one.
Tristan, do you think that your decision on this is a little bit tied towards the waiver wire pool? That if you think that there's going to be acceptable guys in the power, especially in a shallow league, that you get that speed early because you can find a fungible guy on the waiver wire, whereas stolen bases these days at least are much harder to find. Does that affect your decision?
It does a little bit. That doesn't have
Okay.
a significant weight.
Okay. Now we come to a very special player, Adalberto Mondesi. He's very, very, very special. First of all, he's quite risky in terms of performance. He has been injury prone in the past. He seems to put together great halves. I mean, the half of 2020, the first half, which is the month of July and August, he was god-awful, and we thought, my goodness, this is a bust. And then he was one of the top players in all of fantasy for the month of September, and he made it to, I'm going to say, about a overall second-round player when all said and done, which is just incredible where he came from in the first half. But the makeup of him is he's a 50 stolen base guy. I think that the top guys after him that I can reasonably project are Trey Turner with 30, nobody else with more than 30. Mondesi, 50. That's a very valuable commodity because there's nobody who's going to come within even in that production. Plus, it appears that Mondesi has some power. He's not going to be a Malik Smith where he's going to hit 3 homers. He could hit anywhere between 10 and 20 homers in a season. If you look at his way, maybe he won't get the 20 that he's been on the pace for. I think it's closer to 10, 15, but he's not a zero. So how do you evaluate where do you pick him in terms of the context of just a dominant player in stolen bases plus the risk? How do we go about saying pick him here?
Well, first, it's incredible to see that he was the 12th best player in the ESPN leagues last year, despite the fact that he wasn't even in the threshold of AL-only leagues value-wise during that first month you had mentioned.
24 stolen bases. That's why.
Incredible.
24 stolen bases.
Yeah, and I mean, you obviously had to have him during that first month. He stole 8 bases through September 3rd, even though he's almost 700th overall in terms of overall player value.
Right.
This is one of the toughest guys for me to rank. And I really want to get behind Mondesi because you mentioned he does have the pop. The problem is that he doesn't have the patience to have a complete game here.
Right.
There's not enough balance or there's too much inconsistency. And when the player then has an injury question on top of it, that's what gives me pause. He has missed a pretty significant amount of time due to injury over the past 2.5 years. And yeah, he was fully healthy last year, but I think that's going to serve to push him up too much in drafts. If he's going real soon, unless it's a league where I can control the assets, for example, it's not draft format, it would have to be auction, and I'd have to feel that the bidding didn't get out of control, I am probably out on Adalberto Mondesi. I think there's just too much risk there, and you're tying too many things up in one bin. And if he's terrible, yeah, there's always the chance he could start losing playing time, and that's going to influence the steals.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think that in drafts, it's going to be a pass for me because at where he's going, I'm going to want to take a more well-rounded player, a big bopper, a pitcher, more likely a pitcher if anything else. And the variability, I just don't want to pay for. To me, if you're going to be that variable in terms of risk, in terms of when he accumulates stats, you need to get a discount, not a premium for a variable guy. I don't want to pay for it with Mondesi. In an auction, you could find an environment where the stolen base market premium is just not that significant, and paying that price for Mondesi where he goes might be a fit. I mean, I'd rather pay a $5 market premium for Mondesi than a $5 premium on Victor Robles somewhere in the middle. So I could find myself in a situation, and of course, in auctions, there's a way to do that. You don't have to nominate high players first. You can nominate some stolen base players at the end. And actually, that's what Ruven and I did last year in a lot of drafts. We nominated Elvis Andrus, Malik Smith, Lorenzo Cain, just to see what the price of some lower level players were in terms of the market premium, to see, okay, should we take the cheaper guys because there's going to be too much of a market premium on guys on top? Or should we say, you know what, there's not enough of a market premium, we're just going to go for the top and get the Mondesi, get the guys who provide a large amount of steals early. I agree with you. I'm out on Mondesi for a lot of this stuff. You don't need him for your team. The other thing is that, you know, if you're in a roto league, right, it's where you are in the standings. So what if one team gets Mondesi and finishes in first? You can still finish second or third, right, and get almost the same points as that one. I don't find that the variation with one guy happening to get – it's not like you're putting yourself in a deficiency by not getting Mondesi. You're just giving him to somebody else, and I think that matters.
By the way, the other thing to consider is that if he has one of those slumps, the tendency is that his manager is going to get frustrated with him. You might be able to trade for him at a reasonable price at that point, and then you could recoup some of those steals you thought you left at the table.
Well, I have some worrisome numbers here with Mondesi that, I'm really nervous about. He did have shoulder surgery September 2019, so, that may have hindered his running game a little bit because if his shoulder was bothering him, he tends to dive head first, and if he has a shoulder issue, he may not be wanting to dive into head first. But now people are expecting the speed. That's what they're expecting. But last year and the year before,